Greetings from Boston. Thank you for inviting me to this very important initiative, Global Education Conclave 2025. It is indeed a great privilege and a special honor for me to be with you to share my thoughts on how our current education systems should be reset, reformed, or reframed to prepare students in our education system to be effective, competitive in a globalizing socioeconomic dynamics, which is increasingly uncertain, and definitely unpredictable. In that spirit, in the next 15 minutes, I will try to answer three essential questions. First, how will the global economic system, the landscape, change because of several mega shifts or disruptions that are all happening at the same time? Building on that, the second question I would like to answer, as a result, what would be the profile of a successful individual, whether he is in business, in government, in academia, to be able to navigate through such disruptions and be an effective member of the global society? As a result, the third question that I would like to tackle, perhaps that's the central piece of today's discussion. Accordingly, how must our education system change, shaped, or reframed so that we could indeed prepare students who could meet the new requirements of the 21st century? Now, obviously, discussing these 3 points, there could be multiple perspectives, and I will try to synthesize as much as possible all the different perspectives to begin a dialogue which will bring the necessary change in the global education system, and definitely the meeting being organized in Calcutta, which has been the center of education, could begin a new uh, journey to become a model for the world. So first, let's look up some of the significant changes that are taking place right now, as I see within my clients in the various universities that I deal with, from Japan to California, from Sweden to Australia. First, I think we have to be mindful of the technological disruptions. The generative AI, artificial intelligence, is definitely transforming industries all across, transforming how the governments operate, and most importantly, will give birth to new industries that we cannot imagine. So that's a very powerful disruption, and any student should be prepared to deal with a disruption which is truly unpredictable, unknown, but yet someone has to survive in that mode. Second, gene editing. Advances in gene editing technologies, CRISPR, as you know, are revolutionizing the healthcare system, which I call the human care system, which will lead to very targeted approach as to how to manage each and every individuals to drive a significantly healthy future. But it would definitely require a new approach as to how we connect with humanity, how we connect with individuals at the base of the pyramid across the world. And that would really require new type of personalities to make this technology uh, have the positive impact that it deserves to have. Third, high-speed connectivity. High-speed technologies are obviously becoming available. Villages are getting connected. The big question is how to develop this collaborative nature between villages, between towns, so that people could indeed interact with each other in their own mother tongues, but where the cloud would act as a translation mechanism. So when I speak in Punjabi, someone speaks in Spanish, they communicate with each other in their own languages, yet they become part of the community. That is the world coming. Then, of course, people are talking about quantum computing that would significantly speed up as to how the processors work, and that would obviously open up new vistas which we cannot imagine. Then, as you know, new materials are developing very, very rapidly, and we have to think of how the surface properties of materials, how the material science would lead to different kinds of energy systems, which is also becoming extremely important in the context of the big environmental change that is taking place. In fact, that leads to my second point. Outside of technology, there is a change imposed on us because of climate change. This is the urgent need to address climate change. As you know, the glaciers are melting, the ice tops on the top of the mountain peaks are melting. As a result, the water levels are rising, and many of the cities and the towns and villages which are near the shorelines will obviously go under the water. So there has to be fundamental re-engineering of how humanity lives today. And we have to think of how we prepare individuals who could deal with this challenge. And on the other side, develop new behaviors, new etiquettes, so that we do not emit as much carbon dioxide, methane in the atmosphere, which leads to increases in temperature affecting the climate. And of course, with that comes new energy systems. We have to prepare individuals who could think of new ways to connect with solar, wind, hydropower, different from the fossil fuels, different from how the old grid system is to work versus how the new microgrids would work. And then, of course, the most important change is the geopolitical changes. There's a shift in global power dynamics, which will demand of each one of us significant adaptability, cultural competence, and of course, understanding of how international relationships are shifting. Right now, as we talk, as you know, there's a fundamental change taking place in the United States, his relationship with China, his relationship with his neighbors, Canada, Mexico, and including Europe. So new kinds of alliances getting formed, many old alliances are being questioned, and obviously that puts all of us across the world in a state of flux, state of uncertainty, but that's becoming the reality, and we have to prepare our students to deal with such uncertain moments. So that leads to the second question. If that is the environment that's going to emerge in the next 5 to 10 to 15 to 25 years, what would be the nature of the mental makeup, the mindset of an individual working in this environment? And I am thinking of this with a two-dimensional framework. One dimension or one vector would be what I will call the skill dimension, and think of the two end of this vector. One side I would call hard skills, the other side I would call soft skills. And the second vector is about the mindset, attitude, and etiquettes. Internal, how do we connect with ourselves inside, and how do we connect with the world outside? So both these vectors would be very important. And I'll try to talk about each of these vectors in terms of trying to profile a successful individual in this new environment. When I think of vector one, the skill vector, let's think of the hard skills. The critical thinking, problem solving capability would be extremely important because the world would get disrupted, economic models, business models would get disrupted. So, any individuals to survive and enjoy this disruption, if I may use the term, he has to have that problem solving, critical thinking capability. And that too, which should be expressed internationally. Then, of course, the second important thing would be creativity and enterprising spirit, because every time the old model gets disrupted, new models are formed based on the creative energy of individuals. Now, United States over the last, I would say, 100 years have shown that ability. And that ability has often come from people who did not finish high schools, like Thomas Edison. But that environment created, uh, I would say, a spirit, an energizing, and I would say, space, which have led to development of new ideas. I think we have to ensure such abilities get visible across the world. Then, of course, given that we are living in the digital world that we discussed earlier, digital literacy and technical proficiency would be important, even if I am a student of art, humanities, and of course, if I am in science, engineering. But being able to connect with the digital world, the digital media, so that I could interface with different individuals, different situations across the world would be very, very important. And then, of course, connected with that, I would call data literacy, AI readiness, so that we know how to work with AI as opposed to being either scared of AI or becoming too dependent on AI. That would also be a bit dangerous because we could become intellectually lazy. So we have to really learn how to dance with AI, and that capability would be very, very important. And then, of course, related to climate change, every individual, every executive in a company have to learn how to develop sustainable, environmental friendly economic model. So each one of us in the work environment become good stewards of environment. Now, those are the hard skills. Now, similarly, the soft skills, I think because of AI, which will do much of the logical work, individuals have to develop their emotional intelligence, their compassion, their empathy to inspire others, work with others, collaborate with others to create new opportunities. So, development of the emotional intelligence would be extremely important. Similarly, what I will call global citizenship. An individual today should be able to connect with the world, any corner of the world, with equal amount of comfort vis-a-vis where he or she has grown up. So whether I am in Japan or whether I'm in California or whether I'm in Calcutta, I connect with the local environment with equal amount of comfort, with equal amount of respect for the local ecosystem as I move around the world. And that would become increasingly more important, both digitally and physically. Then, of course, collaborative capability. In a world where we are living uh, on technical expertise, a lot of specialization, how to bring multiple expertise together to collaborate ideas, to collaborate skills, to collaborate possibilities, and in the process create the new ecosystem, the new business model, new products, new services would continue to be important and in fact become most important. And the most important point among the soft skills in my mind is leadership. Because we are moving away from the world which has been hierarchy where people waited for orders. Now we are moving for a world where each and every individual, whether he is in his or her 20s, whether he or she is in her 30s or 50s, should own the problem that she or he is responsible for. That is to me is leadership. Leadership is not about bossing. Leadership is about sense of ownership and in the process solve problems leading to solutions which could lead to new possibilities. And that is leadership. And that kind of capability would be increasingly important in the new environment that I'm talking about. And the most important would be in a world which is changing, our ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn at a very high velocity. The world is changing. If I'm only dependent on what I've learned in my school or college 30 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, obviously I'm not connecting with the changes that are taking place. So learn, unlearn the past, learn the new, and that process of going through the cycles of learning, unlearning, and relearning would be very, very important in each and every individual who has to succeed in the new environment. Then comes the vector two. Mind you, the vector one that I talked about was about skills, and we talked about hard skills and soft skills. Now I'm talking about the mindset, attitude, and etiquettes, internal and external. Let me talk about the internal part of the attitude. Individuals have to become significantly more adaptable and resilient. We have to keep our egos submerged so that we are adapting to the new environment internally with comfort, not feel uncomfortable, and be resilient. And at the same time, every individual should be able to connect with possibilities with an enterprising mindset. So there's 2 points I like to make in terms of internal development is enterprising mindset and adaptable and resilient mindset. That's the internal. Externally, individuals have to learn how to be totally culturally sensitive, eager to learn, express etiquettes and behaviors which others would appreciate, others would um, look up to. Now, which means education systems in the future has to also focus on global etiquettes, global behaviors, global ways of connecting with different cultures. So, given that, now let's think of how we have to reimagine the education system of the future. Because again, let me just quickly summarize what we have discussed so far. We have first discussed how the business and economic landscape of the world would change because of several disruptions. Then we talked about in that disruptive environment for individuals to succeed, what kind of mindset, what kind of skill sets individuals must have. And then I'm talking about, as a result, today's education systems, universities, how could they cultivate an environment where we could indeed prepare students to become uh, what I would call the stars, the big players of the future. Now, in order to discuss that, I would like to think of three fundamental components. One is how should education, I would say, system or centers of learning think of content. Second, how they should think of faculty-student interactions. And third, how should an educational institute or a center of learning connect with the bigger ecosystem? So these are the three components I like to touch on. But before I touch on that, at a higher level, we have to keep in mind that we have to look at education no longer a place for job placement. That's how typically universities are working today. So many people, when they graduate, they have to be placed in some jobs. It should be viewed as a place for lifelong learning to build responsible citizens. That's how education systems used to be in Taxila, Nalanda, Oxford, Cambridge, even Calcutta University 100 years ago. People used to go to universities to learn a subject, not to thinking of what job will I do. That used to typically follow. We have to bring back that culture of lifelong learning, the culture of that I'm going to immerse in a subject, what I'm passionate about. Second thing I think would be very important. These days, because of social media, I often get advice, Partha, can you create a video clippings or reels, which is only 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds? Now, in the process, I'm serving people to become, uh, I would say, decrease their span of attention. But the role of the education system is to help people to become immersive, become meditative, so they can focus on a subject for 2 hours, 3 hours, as opposed to saying, well, this is where the world is going, and help the students to connect with this world by decreasing their span of attention. And that is a very interesting dilemma that all of you have to think of, that we serve the customer as the customer wants it, or do we serve the customer as to what is good for the customer and society? Now we are dealing with very complex problems, as I discussed with about climate change, that needs immersive effort. People have to focus and think, as did Satyan Bose, as did Einstein, as did Newton. They have to go into the subject. So I think we have to think seriously how to help and create an immersive environment as opposed to short reel social media environment. And the third point I like to make is, which I touched on earlier, that at the highest level, we also have to think of the velocity of learning, how to develop the curriculum, the courses, the content, the faculty-student interaction, and the educational ecosystem. So the velocity of learning, unlearning, and relearning is significantly increased. So that is at the highest level, the three objectives of an education system should be. Now I'll talk about what I will call the strategic triangle: the content, the faculty-student interaction, and the educational ecosystem. How any centers of learning should develop is global ecosystem. So first, let me talk about the content. Firstly, we have to make the curriculum significantly innovation. The curriculum should be continuously innovated. It should not be the same syllabus which was developed 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago. I think every semester, maybe that's too frequent, maybe every year, a curriculum has to be fundamentally re-engineered, innovative, so that it is in tune with time. The nature of the education has to be interdisciplinary. Though I may focus on physics, but I should understand chemistry or humanities so I can broaden the mind while I'm deepening my knowledge in physics. The classroom process should be significantly more experientially learning. We should typically what we do, we teach people theories and we expect them to solve problems. It should be other way around. Give people problems, let them work on the problems. They will come up with new theories, and once they've worked on the problems, then teach the theory. In other words, we are literally reversing the process from instead of theory to problem solving, from problem solving to understanding the theory, and in the process, we are giving students the opportunity to enrich the theories themselves, and who knows, some new theories could emerge in the process. Similarly, the content should be focused on global citizenship. As I talked about, on one side, students, whichever field they should be familiar with global trends, what's happening in geopolitics, what's happening in geoeconomics, what's happening in climate, happening in terms of new technologies which are disrupting the world. Every student, whether they're a student of humanities or student of science, they should have that understanding. In fact, I'm right now offering a course at Tufts University, which is a graduate seminar. We are talking about big trends which will perhaps shape the future. And that should be part of the curriculum. And similarly, in the spirit of global citizenship, we have to ensure that people understand the etiquettes and behaviors which should be appreciated globally. Sometimes I find etiquettes and behaviors are too short, which naturally develops a wrong image of the particular community that group of students are representing. So that's about the content. The second corner of the strategic triangle is the faculty student interaction. There, I think there's a room for a major change. In the past, the thinking was professor is superior, he's the guru, student is the disciple, he has to only listen. That's the linear mode of teaching. Perhaps it was okay in the past, but the world which is continuously fermenting, new knowledge is born at the speed of light. We have to create an atmosphere of nonlinear uh, thinking, an atmosphere which is not one way but multi channels. The students would as much teach the professor as much professor will teach the student, and in the process created an intellectual dialogue in the classroom. And that is a fundamental change which is required, that how to create that atmosphere. Teachers have to think of themselves not as teachers, but as mentoring and as partners. We have to move from a hierarchical mode of structuring courses to more a partnership mode of structuring classroom discussion. Similarly, in the past, learning was all based on books. Teachers often followed the chapters of the book. I think learning has to move towards questioning, encourage students to question, and in the process facilitate a discussion which lead to interesting answers. So there is a fundamental change in terms of how do we manage the faculty-student interactions. And then comes the third point, the educational ecosystem. I think in the past, often universities were considered as special places which only the elites, the intellectually superior people live, think, often disconnected with the rest of society. I think we have to move towards a system where each and every university, each and every center of learning, from schools to colleges to higher education, should connect with the ecosystem in the neighborhoods and connect with the industry outside. In the process, create a significantly more ventilation so we can breathe ideas from outside, solve problems in the ecosystem, and become part of the ecosystem. Similarly, we should think of global exchange programs. And as soon as we think of global exchange program, we have to think of what do we have which the other universities would appreciate? What are the elements that we want to import from the other universities? As a result, create the exchange, as Tagore used to say. First, let me say in Bengali, debe ar nebe, milabi milebe jabe na fire, এই ভারতের মহামানবে সাগর তীরে. In English, what he's saying, that we have to give and we have to take in a fashion that everyone will come to the shores of my motherland and no one will have the desire to return because the environment that this land provides. But that needs a lot of efforts first of who we are, what we have to offer for every university, whether it's based in Massachusetts or whether it's based in Bengal or Maharashtra. Doesn't matter, but everyone has to ask the question, what do I have to offer which is unique? And then create that exchange program. And then, of course, as I mentioned, there should be significantly more effort of switching to experiential learning, which means we have to connect with the industry, we have to connect with local environment, so we can create projects in the classroom, which are real projects, real life projects. For example, there's a lot of garbage in one part of the city. How could the garbage be converted into useful energy? Let the students go and study the garbage. How could the garbage be processed with their own hands so that we could really help students to connect what I call the three H's, the hand, the head, and the heart. So, because in many countries, particularly a country like India, people who work with hand, they do not get a chance to go to educational centers because they're so poor. People who are going to education system, they do not want to touch and use their muscle to do the work. So, and the people, many of us do not have the heart. But the perfect education system should be able to create a beautiful symphony, beautiful harmony between the three H's, the head, the heart, and the hand. Now, so those are the three triangles. But one thing I want to make very important, since we are entering the world of Gen AI, we have to be very cognizant of the education system which has developed in the last 200, 300 years, which is basically the Western education system, which has focused on the left brain. And this was good during the industrialization era because people needed to be logical, analytical, sequential, mathematical, and process language. So if you look at the education system, it is basically tailored to develop the left brain. But as generative AI comes into play, much of this logical work, the sequential work, the mathematical work would be done by Gen AI. So much of the load on our left brain would be outsourced to Gen AI machines. So firstly, what should be the role of the left brain? Left brain has to be trained to deal with more complexity so that it could work with AI as partners. But the role of the right brain, which is imaginative, which is creative, which is intuitive, will become more important. So the education system, in the name of the three triangles that three corners of a triangle I discussed, content, faculty, student interaction, education system, has to focus on the development of the right brain, the creative part of the right brain. And when the right brain and the left brain could perfectly harmonize, then we will be able to use the power of Gen AI in a more effective fashion. So I think we are in a very interesting space to think of future of education. I've laid out some of my very personal thought based on my interaction with industry. So in summary, I would like to say it is clear that the rapid advancement in emerging technologies such as Gen AI, robotics, high-speed connectivity, gene editing will redefine the global economic and business landscape. There's no doubt about it. And we cannot look at the past, look at the future with the equations of the past. We need new equations. Now, in the process, obviously, current industries will get transformed. Many new industries will be born, which we cannot imagine today. So, first point, we have to train students how to prepare themselves to deal with uncertainty, to have the ability to explore new frontiers. For students, the key to success in the new world to get prepared will not just about mastering technical skills. They will learn to cultivate critical thinking, creativity, ethical awareness, and develop a global mindset. Higher education must focus on developing adaptable, resilient, lifelong learners who can not only use technology but also shape it for the betterment of society. The society, humanity, technology, connectivity has to improve. By doing so, we'll ensure that students are not only ready for the emerging world, but also equipped to lead it. Particularly for educators who are in this conference, it is important to keep in mind the future approach to education will need to evolve in a way that recognizes the interdependence of both left brain, which is analytical, and right brain, which is creative. While technological advancements will automate many of the tasks we associate with the left brain, the right brain's role in creativity, empathy, human connection will only become more valuable and more important. Education system will need to strike a balance, integrating both sides of cognitive development to equip students for the emerging world. This hybrid approach will ensure that they are not just consumers of technology, but creators and innovators and leaders of the new global economy. So I do hope the future education will likely move forward toward the hybrid models that blend right brain with the left brain skills to create adaptable, well-rounded individuals who would take responsibility in developing the future of our civilization. In fact, the boundaries between the two begins to become blur as creative problem solving becomes just as essential and in analytical fields as logical thinking becomes crucial in creative disciplines. So, with that, I'd like to once again thank you for giving me this opportunity. And what I've shared with you is based on my very personal experience working with industry, working with students, working with universities, yet as a student with the hope I can continue to learn the new world that is emerging in front of us. Thank you very much.